Alright, so a lot of people have been wanting to know how to rig weapons for Pavlov VR, and there's not a lot of info out there. So right here, I'm just going to show how to rig it properly. Right here, I have a vanilla MPX model. You see there's no magazine, no suppressor on the end or anything. It's just like that. And what you have to do first is make vertex groups for the trigger and the charging handle and any other moving part that you want. So if you wanted this stock to extend for some reason, you'd also make a vertex group for that. To make vertex groups, you want to go into edit mode and select everything in that group. So for example, if I want to do the trigger, I take the trigger and select all this. So I click all these faces, Control L, click this, Control L, and yeah, that's pretty much the whole trigger. Now you want to go down here and create a new one with the plus, and you want to call this trigger. Same thing for the charging handle. Since the charging handle is going to move, you want to select this, pretty much every single part of the charging handle. I'm pressing Control L to select everything around it. And then what I want to do is go into X-ray mode and get that whole stick in there. If you have like a charging handle that goes inside the gun like this one, if you have like a gun on the AR platform, you're going to want to make sure to select that whole stick inside of there. You're also going to want to make sure to select this door right here. I'm not sure what this is called. I'm just going to call it a door. That's where the empty cartridges are going to eject out of. So you want to select that, make a new vertex group, call it charging handle, and then click assign. I forgot to do that for the trigger. Let me do that real quick. Make sure your charging handle is deselected and assign to the trigger. So right now, if you did it properly, you should be able to select your charging handle and have everything be automatically selected, and then select your trigger and have the trigger be selected. If you wanted to rig the bolt catch or the mag release, you could do that, but I'm not going to do that. Now you're going to want to do is add the bones. That's what's actually going to control where the vertices move. You're going to Shift A, armature, and there's your bone right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this gun to 0, 0 right now. Oh, it is at 0, 0. So I'm going to set its... Here, you don't have to do this. Your gun's probably fine. My gun appears to be off center. Set origin to geometry. Snap selection to cursor. Alright. So you have your bone here, and you're just going to want to place it somewhere that's like in the middle of your gun. So I'm going to rotate it about 90 degrees. You can press X to rotate along the X-axis, and press Control to rotate it in increments of 5. And your bone should be in there. If you want to see it, just go to this little tab right here, and viewport display, and click in front. It's pretty handy. I'm going to scale this up a bit and move it back on the Y-axis. Now next up you want to do is create a bone for the trigger and the charging handle. So I'm going to make a duplicate of this one by using Shift D and putting it here down on the Z-axis. I'm going to scale this down, and I'll move it over in the X-axis or the Y-axis. Rotate on the X, scale that down a bit, just so it fits the trigger a little bit. You don't have to make it fit perfectly. I just like to make it a right size because it just looks right to me. And then you want to make sure you're in edit mode by pressing tab or by going up here and going to edit mode. Select your new bone and select the base bone. If I can select the base bone. Alright, so I got them selected. Now I'm going to do Control P, and you want to select Keep Offset, which it's not letting me do that for some reason. What? Alright, sorry about that. What you need to do is make sure when you duplicate the bone, you're in edit mode and not in object mode. So right now I'm in edit mode, and I push Shift D, and I grab it, move it down to the position where the trigger is. Scale this down. Because what it did, when I made a duplicate in object mode, it created a whole different armature instead of just creating the bone, which is not what I wanted. And move that on the Y, and now I can select the new bone, the old bone, parent with Control P, and push Keep Offset. Now that they're parented, you can select your new bone, make another duplicate with Shift D, move it upwards to my charging handle. Your charging handle will be somewhere else, obviously. Rotate that about 90 degrees. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and move it back to where the charging handle is. Doesn't have to be exact, just put it around that location, you won't have any problems. That should be good. And then what I do just to be safe is I put a bone right by the muzzle, since one of the requirements for gun in Pavlov is having a muzzle socket, and in Unreal Engine you parent sockets off of bones. So I'm going to do that real quick. Scale that down, Z, and it looks like it's perfectly aligned in the muzzle. There you go. Now what we're going to want to do is basically make the gun the parent for the armature, so then it can export as one skeletal mesh. But first we have to name the bones in relation to how you named your vertex groups. So in your little scene browser right here, you want to bring down this little drop down of your armature. And if you did this correctly, there should be some bones underneath your base bone. So you take this bone, and it highlights this one. This bone's obviously on my trigger, so I'm going to name it trigger. This bone is obviously on the charging handle, so I'm going to name it charging handle. Make sure it's the same name as your vertex group. And this one's on the muzzle, so I'm going to call it the muzzle. Now I didn't make a vertex group for the muzzle, so I'm going to do that real quick. Well, no, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. And now that they're all named, you can click on your bone, then shift click on your gun, and do Control P. Sorry, your gun, and then your bone, and you do Control P. Now normally if you're rigging a character, you do automatic weights, but since it's a gun and something that doesn't move like a live creature, you're going to do empty groups. Now if you did it correctly, you should be able to go into pose mode and select any one of your bones, and your vertex group should start moving along with it. So you see this trigger is going to move like that, or if I wanted to move it back, I can move it like this. And then my charging handle, select that. You can move it back on the Y, and you see the door opens. That's some weird geometry. You can probably delete that if you have this problem. And then if you rigged your stock, the same thing would happen. You take the bone, move it outwards, and the stock would extend outwards. And then when you're done, you can just export as an FBX, put into Unreal Engine, you'll be good to go.